Moving forward, we have Georgia State on the road at Georgia Southern. The home team. Eagles are 1.5 point. I can never remember who the Golden Eagles are and regular Eagles. I'm sorry, Georgia Southern. Golden Eagles are Southern Miss. The Georgia Southern Eagles are 1.5 point home favorites. There we go. I'm going to say that with conviction. It has an over-under of 64 points. This game kicks off Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Let me tell you, if you're not familiar with Sun Belt football or Group of 5 football, you may not know this. This is a big-time rivalry. I'm not even talking about just a rivalry. It's a big-time rivalry. Georgia Southern has a saying that says, always Southern, never State. That's their mantra whenever they go into this game. It's a pretty bitter rivalry. On the other side, Georgia State, though, off to a 6-1 start. That's their best start as a member of the FBS. It's actually their best start in program history. Like, how about it here? They've got a pretty good thing going. And as such, they took some pretty decent movement on Tuesday from +2.5 to +1.5. I was looking for +3. I was really crossing my fingers for it. I don't see that happening now. And the over also slightly moved up from 62 to 64 on Tuesday as we're recording here. Georgia State has been doing a really good job of keeping Darren Granger clean. He's been sacked just 7 times so far. It's a top 20 number nationally. The system helps too. It's a get the ball out quick kind of thing. They get the ball to the playmakers on the perimeter on the edge. Let them work in space. They do. He leads the Sun Belt in adjusted completion rate, 81%. That's 5th best in the country. He's having himself a really decent year. Georgia Southern on the other side, they're not great against pass. They're 102nd in passing success rate on defense. And I think that's more in line with what they'll be defending against Georgia State. What I mean by that is, you can look at the EPA marks. You can look at the success rate marks. When I see a better success rate metric on defense, that tells me that they are not allowing teams to get chunk yards. EPA is where you're talking about explosive plays. Success rate is about methodical. Can you move the football? And they're allowing teams to methodically move the football even if they're capping the explosive plays. Darren Granger is also one of the better dual threats. He has 370 yards and 5 touchdowns, but that hasn't been nearly what he's been asked in the past 2 years. He's really turned it down. It's been a lot more passing than rushing. He kind of rushes on a need-to basis instead of just an all-the-time basis like it was last year. Marcus Carroll in the backfield, the running back, that definitely helps his case a little bit there. He's second in the Sun Belt in rushing yards, over 850 so far in the year. He has 10 touchdowns, 31 missed tackles forced. That's 3rd best in the conference as well. Georgia Southern, I think they've been pretty good against the run. They're 40th in rush EPA allowed. They're a sound tackling team, which is always good, especially when you're looking at these midweek games that can get real weird. One of the most frustrating things is teams that just consistently miss tackles. That's not Georgia Southern's defense this year. Their biggest issue, Georgia State's pass defense is 122nd in EPA per pass on defense there. And they're facing Davis Brin, who has over 2,100 passing yards, the most passing attempts in the entire country. But he does have 11 interceptions, tied for the most in the entire FBS, and 17 turnover-worthy plays, which is second most. 5 picks did come against Wisconsin, but he has thrown 2 each in each of his last 2 games. 4 turnover-worthy throws against Coastal. That turned into 0 interceptions, luckily, but the opportunity was there for him to have more than just 11 picks on the year. He'll give you plenty of chances to get the football back, that's for sure. Georgia State has 6 interceptions on the year, but 3 of them came from corner Gavin Pringle alone. I think it comes down to whether Brin continues to be careless with his throws or not. We've all seen it. It could be so frustrating to watch teams just turn the ball over incessantly on Thursday night, which could be the case here for Georgia Southern.
You mentioned this is a big rivalry, Brett, and I definitely agree. It is. Georgia State leads the series. I had to look it up. Georgia State leads the series 6-3. In my mind, Georgia State will always win this series. Just it's over because both these teams entered FBS at the same time. One of them got their information into EA Sports in time to make the NCAA 14 video game. The other did not. Georgia State was included in NCAA 14. Georgia Southern was not. I wouldn't remember that if not for the fact we haven't had a new version of that game in 10 years. So I remember starting out with Dynasty mode. You're thinking about, okay, what team you're going to be? You're either going to start really good, really bad, whatever. When I decided I wanted to start really bad, it was always Georgia State because they had no FBS history. They had no record on anything, and they were the only team because Georgia Southern did not meet the deadlines, if I remember correctly, that EA Sports had set forth. So, hey, it's a rivalry on the field. Georgia State actually is winning at 6-3. In my book, Georgia State's already won this thing forever and always because they got an NCAA 14. Georgia Southern did not. Brett,
really quick to jump in while we're talking about NCAA. I haven't played with Georgia State a lot in NCAA, but do you know where Georgia State plays their home football games?
In that game, I want to say in that game they're playing in a dome. Was it the Georgia Dome? Like, were they playing in Atlanta? Like, were the Falcons?
They used to play in Georgia Dome. They actually moved it to the old defunct Turner Field in downtown Atlanta. They converted it to a football stadium.
I did not know that. Turner Field, where the
old
used to
Braves,
play.
The old Braves, yeah. Yep.
Man, no, I did not know that, but I know in that game they played in a dome because, again, I remember that's where I started if I wanted to start at the bottom of it. So, anyway, this is exactly the type of game, Brett, that makes me want to add more criteria to my watchability score formula. As it is, though, this game's a 5.6. With James Madison ineligible for the Sun Belt Championship game, this game's as big as it gets in the East Division this year. You mentioned it at the top. It's a big game in the East Division. It is. I have Georgia Southern -1. It's a 53% win expectancy for the Eagles. Georgia Southern's number 82 overall in my power ratings. At number 53, this is the second best offense in the East Division, behind only Georgia State. But at number 104, this defense is the second worst in the division, better than only App State. Talk about a team that's been disappointing this year out of the Sun Belt, App State. I know we're not talking about them, but man, you're not used to seeing the Mountaineers at the bottom of the projected standings in the Sun Belt. It's not good for Georgia Southern, though, because Georgia State, they have the best offense that the Eagles will face all season based on my numbers. I started with Georgia Southern because they're my projected winner, and that's my rule. But to be honest, Brett, this game's all about Georgia State for me for some of the reasons that you mentioned. Panthers have a K-Ford rating of -2.1, corresponding ranking of 74. Those are both season bests. And while the offense is the better of the two units here for the Panthers at number 43, it's the defense that is currently ranked at a season high number 90 on that side of the ball. Both offenses should have the advantage based on my numbers. I think ultimately the difference in this one could be the home field that Georgia Southern's going to get here. Control of the Sun Belt East is on the line. A win would give Georgia State a 64% chance to win the division, while a loss would see the Panthers' chances drop to just 24%. For Georgia Southern, their chances to win the East are 45 and 11% respectively, with a win or a loss in this game. Bottom line, I have Georgia Southern -1. It's a 47% chance that Georgia State moves to 4-1 in conference play and really takes firm control of that East Division.
I know it's only moved up a couple of points, but man, just thinking about it, since we're talking through it here, over 62 seems like it'd at least be a fun bet to follow along here. But look, I've been all over underdogs last week, this week, and I think I like the underdog here too. Georgia Southern is bad at finishing drives and letting opponents finish drives. That could be, and we're talked about turnovers. That could be a maddening game if that trend continues for both Georgia Southern backers in the betting market and fans. I do have to give a shout out Parker Fleming. I've shouted him out on here before. I get a lot of statistics from him. He puts together incredible advanced statistic previews. He has a points per echo, which just kind of boils down to points per quality possession, and that's where I'm pulling those numbers from. So hat tip to @StatsWar on Twitter. Georgia State, they're a lot better at finishing those drives, although I do think this matters a little bit. Even if it's just a smidge edge, but we're talking about a 1.5 point spread here. A win here secures a bowl bid for Georgia Southern. I know you talked about the implications in the conference, in the division, but they also can secure a bowl bid here. And what better time to do it than in front of your home crowd against your rival? But Georgia State, on the other hand, doesn't want that to happen. I do think I take Georgia State here in the game to win outright.